Bolton bounced back, questions are raised over Gary Monk's future at Cambridge, and Birmingham stay unbeaten. Welcome to the League One Lowdown here on the Deck Network. Hello everyone, welcome to the League One Lowdown. It's another review episode, a week that's absolutely flown by for me. I'm Jamie Johnson, alongside me, Seb Jones. Has it been the same for you? So a week that sort of just seems to have disappeared.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you there. Yeah, it seems to have flown by. Kind of like 7 days since we last here, but yeah, lots happened, and we're back again.
Exactly, a lot's happened. Obviously, both moving back towards university, and a lot's happened in the football world, and especially in League One. It was sort of a trying to pick 5 or 6 games to cover this week was difficult. Usually, we're sort of scratching around, like trying to find the last 1 or 2. You're thinking, oh, is there much to talk about in this one? Whereas this week, we've got no end of games to talk about. Well, we picked 6 out that we'll talk about in a little bit more detail, and then at the end, run down the rest of them. We won't be going in depth on Lincoln this week. That everyone can be rest assured. We'll have a week off.
That one was one of the exciting ones you were on about.
Oh, of course, the dullest game of football ever seen in League One. I think it was absolutely dreadful. But we don't want to start on a negative. We want to start on something a little bit exciting. It's a negative for Cambridge because we're going to start there, and their 2-1 loss against Wycombe. A 95th minute winner, Cameron Humphreys, having that. But the real sort of talking point from the game is obviously the flip side of it in Cambridge. It's 9 games without a win in all competitions, just 1 point from their 6 league outings so far. And we talked about Ian Evatt being in trouble last week. I feel like it's Gary Monk that's in trouble this week, Seb.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, stuck at the bottom of the League One table with just a point on board so far. Definitely concerning for Cambridge and Gary Monk, obviously the man in charge at the moment. You know, all could change. But yeah, six games played and only 1 point on board, 9 without a win. It's not looking very good at all for his side, and there can't be anything but concern among the Cambridge fan base. Really, they got away with it the past couple of seasons, really, in terms of that they've always been down there, but never quite sort of what they are now, rooted to the bottom. They've always sort of drifted around the 20th, 19th position in the league. But this season, it's not started well for them at all. So yeah, definitely concerns both as a squad and both as an individual within Gary Monk. It's concerning, and I'm not really sure where their next points are going to come from, really.
I think it's confusing a little bit in a way because they're scoring goals, and the issue really is just the fact that they can't seem to keep them out. There have been no clean sheets yet this season as they're closing in on double digits in terms of games played. But they're scoring, and then at the other end, it's just not happening for them. But the real talking point, obviously, Gary Monk came in towards the back end of last season, kept them up, obviously, which was an achievement in itself. But it seems to have all been forgotten. And after such a bad start, you can't be too surprised. And he's already in a real sticky situation in a job. I think we said it, and a lot of people were saying it when he came in and that back end of the season, how important it was for him to do well after sort of failing at a few clubs. And it was a real sort of last chance saloon for him back in management, back in first team management in League One. And it's not going well for him at all, so.
No, not at all. Just to pick up on the point you said there, in terms of they are actually scoring. So the past couple of results, they've fallen to 2-1 defeats. We're now on about Wycombe in terms of the Saturday just passed. But before that, the period in the EFL Trophy lost 2-1. Before that, lost to Mansfield 2-1 in the league. And then if you cast your mind all the way back to August, which seems a world away now, they actually scored 4 goals at home against Blackpool. But drew that one 4-4. Now, in any other League One game of football, scoring 4 goals, you're almost guaranteed a victory. It's a luck of the draw, really, that scoring 4 goals at home only got the 1 point, which is the sole point of their season so far. So they're definitely scoring goals is not an issue. It's just about making those goals count, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's there's definitely sort of progress there. It just needs to be worked on really. And I mentioned earlier about the next couple of fixtures. They have Lincoln at home, who I know apart from the ball draw that they've had, have got some talented players in amongst the draw in amongst the side. But then after that, they face Rotherham, who brought in plenty of good signings over the summer. Yes, they've not quite got up to speed so far, but I'm sure it'll only be a matter of time before that is the case. They have Exeter, who are actually doing surprisingly well in the table, currently sitting 11th with 9 points from 6. I'm not quite sure everyone really expected them to be as high as they are. And then after that, they've got Birmingham, which, as we know, are a very talented side. So the next 3-4 games will be a stretch for Cambridge, and it will definitely be a stretch in terms of the future of Gary Monk for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it and it is, like you said a couple of minutes ago, in terms where's the next win coming from? Where's the next point coming from? And I struggle to pick out a game where I think, yeah, that's the one where they can really sort of drive in and pull out a result. I mean, Shane Lavery has been sort of probably the pick of their players so far in terms of goals and contributions. He got 2 goals so far this season, both in that game against Blackpool, but he's out for at least 6 weeks now. And it's a blow like that you really don't want at any time this season in terms of a striker going out injured, but especially not when you're in such a difficult patch. I'm going to have to put you on the spot though, I think, Seb. And actually, the big question, in terms of, I think the way I look at it is in such a tough league. Obviously, we all talked about it at the start of the season how competitive the league was, teams coming up, teams coming down, being of real quality, and you can't afford to slip away. I mean, obviously, bottom of the table, just the 1 point. They're 5 points off safety. At Leyton Orient, it obviously turned around quite quickly for them. We'll get to them a bit later on. They've got 2 in 2 now, and they've suddenly shot themselves up a few places, and they're out of the relegation zone. That's what a Cambridge needs, isn't it? They need just a couple of wins and fire themselves up a few places. Is Gary Monk the person for that, or are they going to have to cut their losses and move on?
Well, it's a tricky one, Jamie, because the past couple of managers we've spoke about being in a bit of trouble on this podcast, and then gone on to actually done quite well in the following weeks. Notably Bolton, their gaffer there, and Leyton Orient as well. Both sides seem to have picked up a little bit of form, and as you said, it's just a little bit of form that can push you quite high up in terms of the league table. I can't see it being a third time lucky for Cambridge and for Gary Monk. I fear that they are going to have to get rid of him pretty soon in order to bring a new manager in to sort of make sure that they can sort of rectify the season really. So yeah, Gary Monk for me, I think will not be able to escape the dreaded sack.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'll put my sort of flag to the mast and say I don't think he's going to get through the next 4. Lincoln, Rotherham, Exeter to Birmingham. Yeah. And I don't think he's going to get beyond that. That'll take him to sort of middle of October. And then you get a new manager in for a run of form, which isn't a run of fixtures, I beg your pardon, that isn't great, but better. Wigan, Stevenage, Burton is slightly better than those fixtures I've had out sort of first off. So yeah, that's what I see happening. Maybe they cut their losses after getting trounced by Birmingham in a couple of weeks, and then try and get a new manager bounce, I guess, a little bit, you would say, towards the end of the month of October. But you mentioned one of the teams where we perhaps cursed them positively, cursed them into a win this week, in terms of talking about Ian Evatt last week and the trouble he was under after a big loss against Huddersfield, the worst moment of his time at Bolton, I think he described it as last week. And off the back of that, unbelievably, they've gone and put 5 past Reading, 5-2 victory. Ian Evatt in trouble, not anymore. I put in my notes for this one. It was a Dion Charles hat-trick, a couple of penalties in there. And either side was goals from Josh Sheehan and Kyle Dempsey. Real sort of domination in the game. But the only issue I think you would say was the goals conceded, which we'll get to if we just talk about first, just the real positive of the fact that they've got a victory and not just a scraped 1-0, 2-1. They've battered a team and really got themselves back where they need to be on a decent vein of form, you'd imagine.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think Ian Evatt must have had our podcast on in the dressing room last week, and evidently given some inspiration to his side. But yeah, in terms of a statement victory, Bolton certainly had that at the weekend, 3-0 up within the first 35 minutes. So definitely not something to be sniffed at. And yeah, I think they'll be slightly disappointed, as you say, with the way that they did concede the 2 goals. But to score 5 at home, certainly no mean feat and very impressive. As you say, a couple of penalties in there. Dion Charles stepping up. He's not had his finest of form at the start of this season, but we know from last season the qualities that he does have and what he can bring to this Bolton side, as can many of the other attacking options that they do have. It's just that none of them really have performed to the standard that we know of them. But Gian Charles, great to see him grab a hat trick on the score sheet, and Sheen and Dempsey as well, adding to that tally. So yeah, emphatic victory for Bolton. Will almost be breathing a little bit of sigh of relief, and we'll be hoping to use this emphatic victory, as I said, to sort of use that as momentum to push up further up the table.
Yeah, it's the perfect springboard, isn't it? I mean, you look at the next games, they've got Arsenal in midweek, a real free hit in the EFL Cup. And then after that, I mean, I don't think you could ask on paper for much better fixtures. Crawley, Northampton and Shrewsbury. Obviously, Northampton got themselves a good result, which we're going to get to before we take our break. But you look at that, and a Bolton perspective, you've got to be thinking we're going to pick up some points in those games. And off the back of a 5-2 win against a Reading side who are never easy to break down. I mean, this obviously they were away in this game, but at home they're a very difficult team to beat. And that on their day, Reading can beat anyone in this division. And on this day, Bolton really put the boot in on them. But I guess the only negative you'd take out of such a big statement victory, like you mentioned, Seb, is the couple of goals conceded. They've conceded 8 in their last 3 games and 14 in their last 6 across all competitions. That's got to be the concern. I think they've got the strikers, haven't they? Dion Charles, obviously a hat-trick in this one. Just at one of Collins, Adebayo scored, obviously, at the first game of the season. They've got so many quality options at the top end of the pitch. It's defensively where the issues seem to be.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, been playing that 3-5-2 system that has been so trusted for Ian Evatt, and the players. A lot of them are pretty similar to the ones from last season, and in fact the season before as well. But yeah, something isn't quite right at the back. I'm not one to point fingers really, but I know Ricardo Santos last season sort of had a bit of a blinder really, in terms of that he was crucial to that sort of defensive unit of Bolton. We've not really seen the same standards and the same quality that he had showed last year in the fixtures so far this season. Interestingly as well, I'm not quite sure. I wonder if you'll be able to elaborate on this. He was captain last season, but last weekend he started from the off, but didn't start with the captain's armband. So I don't know if that is sort of, I don't know, a way of even Ian Evatt just saying focus on your football a little bit more rather than sort of focusing on the captaincy. The captain went to the George Tomlinson for the game at home to Reading. But that for me, sort of, I did raise a little bit of an eyebrow at it really, because as I said, it was skipper last year, such an influential rock at the back, and this season, particularly at the weekend, wasn't captain, and not the greatest start to the season so far.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I feel like it's always difficult when you take the captaincy off someone, even if it is sort of momentary. But he's kept him in the team, obviously, and that you would indicate that he's not lost faith in him, but maybe the captaincy's too much, it's turned out to be, or the extra pressure of being the captain isn't what he needs at the minute. Maybe that's the thinking behind it.
Perhaps, yeah. As you are.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think there's too much you can really think into it. I mean, it seems you'd imagine to be an Ian Everett decision. It's not something I've really delved into. It'd be interesting to see if there is any reporting on it from sort of the Bolton end of things as to a reason why. But it's worked this week at
Yeah,
least.
well, first,
You'd
yeah,
say
yeah, yeah.
they've got themselves a victory, and sort of no matter what is happening around the club and that negativity that was around the place a couple of weeks ago or last week even. That now it can really turn around. And if you can't go off the back of a 5-2 win and turn that into a run of form, then it's worse than I think even we were thinking last week in terms of Ian Everett's standing at Bolton.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, for sure. They do just have to work on that defensive back line, really, and making it a solid unit as it was last season, and particularly the amount of goals that they've conceded this season. Ian Everett, of course, being a former defender, I'm sure will not be pleased with that at all. But yeah, to score 5, Dylan Charles hat-trick, yeah, almost a perfect weekend for Bolton.
That's it. And the team they faced last weekend, obviously they put 4 past them. It's completely the opposite direction this week because they've lost Huddersfield, obviously, to Northampton Town at home, 3-1 defeat. It's I don't know what's happened, but they've sort of swapped places, Bolton and Huddersfield. Last week it was Huddersfield are fantastic, Bolton are struggling, and this week it's what's happened to Huddersfield. They've just lost at home to Northampton, and Bolton obviously doing so well, like we talked about a minute ago. But they went 3-0 down as well in this game. Karoma, who was in my fantasy team this week, he scored, and then there was a Northampton Town red card, and then he missed a penalty. And I have to look at it and go, if he scores that penalty, 84th, 85th minute, I think it was, makes it 3-2, man advantage on the front foot. I think there is getting an equaliser in those last 5 minutes plus injury time. So I think that's the moment that really kills the game. But Northampton, you've got to give credit to them. 3 shots on target, 3 goals. It doesn't get more clinical than that. And Huddersfield better on the stats, but it's that clinicality that Northampton had in this game, and they're a side, Northampton, that can really do a job when they need to, and they've done a job in this game, and it's a really good result for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, myself being a Barnes fan, I've seen a lot of things on the Barnsley end of Twitter this weekend saying that it's 2 former players doing us a favour over our Yorkshire rivals. I say 2 because Cameron McGeehan scored the second goal for Northampton, but the first one was an unbelievable own goal from Michal Helik, the Huddersfield centre half. Have you seen this,
Yeah.
Jim?
Yeah, if anyone hasn't seen it, it is one of the strangest own goals I think I've seen. That it's just very simple triangles playing it out from the back, and then Helic decided rather than to play it to his goalkeeper, who stood exactly where you'd expect the goalkeeper
Yeah.
to be stood, just to pass it into the net, and it was. I think it took Helic by surprise. Never mind taking everyone else by surprise. A really odd own goal. If anyone hasn't seen it, it's worth finding. A real gem of the weekend in terms of a shocking bit of play.
It was, yeah, but Northampton Town didn't care because it was in the net in their favour, really. So it meant that they were 2-0 up within 25 minutes. As I said, McGeehan grabbing the second. So to go 2-0 up at half time away at Huddersfield, I bet that they'd have been buzzing in that away dressing room. Manager would have just been keep it tight, keep it steady, and that, in fairness, is what they managed to do for the most part. And Fosu added a third for them, and as you said, it's at the sort of the last 10 minutes did fall in the end in Northampton's favour. Yes, they conceded one, Josh Karoma, but they did prevent a second one from the penalty spot. Lee Burge saving from Karoma, trying to look for his brace, but yeah, Burge denied him. So yeah, to hang on with 10 men away from home, I think it was a well sort of ground out away performance from
Well deserved. Sort of, it's a proper away victory, that isn't it? There's backs against the wall. Take your chances. You're not going to get very many going to a place like Huddersfield. And when they have got chances, they've made the most of them. I mean, all credit to them. It's so far this season, they've got 6 games, and they've drew, lost, and won in equal measure, 2 of each so far. So it sits them exactly mid-table in 12th. But John Brady, I mean, he's done a cracking job out in Northampton, and I think we talked about at the start of the season in terms of losing Mark Leonard, obviously on loan from Brighton. I don't know why I stumbled over that. He's obviously at Birmingham now, which is what I was maybe getting a bit confused over. I mean, he's a wonderful player, and he was the real cog that kept that team together. Now he's moved on, but they're still performing, getting results, and they're one of those teams in League One. There's quite a few of them. You mentioned Exeter, maybe a Wigan as well. You've got teams in that sort of area that you look on paper and you go, "Oh, we should be beating those," but you can't underestimate a team like that. They're really good, solid teams at this level. And Northampton, it's a really good result for them, this one.
Yeah, and it's their first away win since February as well. So yeah, John Brady will be doubly pleased with that one. But yeah, two draws, 2 defeats, 2 wins so far in the season. I think they'll definitely be happy. Exactly mid-table. I think that the fans and the manager and the whole team around Northampton, I think, will actually be pretty pleased with the start to the season, considering where they are on the table. As you said, losing a key player over the summer, and yeah, managing to win away from home from Huddersfield, which is not an easy place to go. It does definitely. There's definitely questions then over Michael Duff at Huddersfield. I know they're still sitting 5th, but to sort of crumble in the way that they did, particularly with that Mihail Helik own goal, definitely sort of things to be put right in that one. But yeah, Northampton deserve all the credit they get for winning on Saturday.
100%. Yeah, not all smooth sailing for Huddersfield. Those first 4 games in all competitions, they came out winners of, and then a loss to Walsall in the cup, followed by a loss to Rotherham in the league, and then Doncaster in the EFL Trophy, which you obviously don't put too much stock into because it's the reserves, isn't it? You're sticking out in a game like that. But a couple of losses in more meaningful competitions before getting back on the winning way last week. So a little bit inconsistency after that great start to the season, but it's still early days. 6 games in, they've won 4. They've got themselves 5th in the table. So I don't think they'll be too disappointed with that start, all things considered, sort of adjusting to life in League One. But we'll have to take a very quick break, and then afterwards we'll come back, talk about a surprise, at least for me, win for Leyton Orient. Barnsley's dramatic 3 points through. You've got a lot to say about that, Seb. And then the Galacticos of League One. Welcome back then, Jamie Johnson alongside Seb Jones here on the League One Lowdown. We'll jump straight back into it. And the game out at Stockport, which finished Stockport 1, Leyton Orient 4, was a shock for me when I was reading through the results and sort of the notifications throughout the afternoon. Before we sort of dive into it, I mean, it was a shock for me, this one. Is it the surprise of the weekend for you as well, Seb?
Yeah, I think so, for sure. One of my good friends is a Stockport fan, and he was messaging me during the game saying, "Where has this come from? Like they've not really seen a performance like that at all in the season so far. I know they've sort of perhaps overachieved in the start of the fixtures, but yeah, just absolutely shocked, and even myself sort of seen that as you did as well. So seeing the goals come through, and then later on seeing the clips of the highlights and whatnot, it's quite surprising, really, because it's sort of 2 teams in contrasting form. Stockport have been the early leaders, really, alongside Wrexham. Those 2 have been first and second. Orient took ages to sort of grab the first win, as is well documented, particularly on here. And yeah, the result was one that I certainly didn't see coming. I finished 4-1 to Orient, and they were 2-0 up within 20 minutes. So I'm sure, Stockport fans not too pleased with that one.
Yeah, it's their first loss this season in the league, and suddenly you go from being unbeaten in the league, and now they're 3 games without a win in league action. A draw to Mansfield, a draw to Crawley, and then this defeat here, obviously, following their really good start to the season. Those first 3 games, they won, and they were doing all right in sort of all fronts, those first month and a bit of the season. But suddenly out of nowhere, and you're looking at a team like Stockport, a huge loss like this. It's really sort of come out of nowhere at home as well at Edgeley Park. To lose in such a manner to a team that are struggling is really quite miraculous. I mean, I couldn't quite believe it. They had less possession, Leyton Orient, less XG and less shots. I mean, half the shots Stockport did, but they've won the game comfortably. So there's a lot more to it than having the ball and maybe having the most efforts. If you're having the better quality ones, and importantly, put them in the back of the net. They scored when they had the chances, and that's the really important thing for Leyton Orient. They won obviously last week, and it was a theme we sort of picked up during the international break. With Sam, obviously, they're one of the co-hosts on the preview episodes of the League One Lowdown. Obviously, an Orient fan. He was talking about the thread in terms of last season that they started the season poorly, and then after the international break, kicked into life, and he was hoping it was going to happen again, and he's got his wish. Obviously, they won last week, and then they've won again, back-to-back wins, and they've gone from having 3 league goals to their name this season to having 7. I mean, they've more than doubled their tally in a single afternoon. So really good for Leyton Orient, as much as it's a blip, and you'd hope it was a blip from a Stockport perspective, not a sign maybe of things to come that they'll slip away after such a good start. But for Leyton Orient, it's got themselves out of the relegation zone, a couple of wins now to their name, and suddenly, I mean, obviously early on, it's so condensed, the table. They're on 6 points, and they're only 3 points off the top half of the table. So suddenly, out of nowhere, they've put themselves into life, like sort of got themselves back on the right track. And Richie Wellens has got to take some of the credit for that, hasn't he, Seb?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I spoke a couple of weeks ago saying Richie Wellens would be off to Blackpool, and he's going to leave Orient, and they're going to struggle. And well, what do I know? Yeah, they started the day on Saturday, third bottom in the table, and they're now in the safe position in 20th place. As you said, not far, just a couple of points off mid-table in the early stages of the season, having only played 6. A couple of teams around them have played 7 already. So, yeah, I think it's amazing what a couple of results can do in terms of morale and in terms of league table positions as well. So, yeah, on the up really for Leyton Orient. And for Stockport, I do wonder if the past couple of results have been a little bit of a reality check after their tremendous start, which I'm sure no one really saw coming. But I do wonder if there have been a bit of a reality check. They're trying to find feet in League One after promotion over the summer, and whether they sort of just started too early, sort of too fast, really. Adapting to a new league and a new division. But yeah, Leyton Orient will be very pleased with that result on Saturday.
Definitely. And we get to go now to my favourite part of the podcast, because I get to sit back in my chair and listen to Seb talk about Barnsley, and he loves talking about Barnsley, especially when they win. So I'll stop you in about 5 minutes, Seb. Barnsley, a 2-1 win at Burton.
Indeed, yeah. Yeah, well, I'll be honest, it's been a bit of a rubbish week being a Barnes fan. Obviously, a very heavy defeat at Old Trafford, and then defeat prior to that away at Stevenage.
And you were there at Old Trafford as well, weren't you, on
I
Tuesday
was,
night?
yeah. I was one of, there's about 6,500 of us at Old Trafford. We were singing all game. We were much more vocal than the so-called famous atmosphere at Old Trafford. So that was really good evening out, in fairness, despite the result. But when will the next time be we'll go to Old Trafford is the way I look at things. So yeah, that it's been a disappointing week, really. Average 10-0 defeat. So we needed a result, basically. And we got that in the end in a bit of dramatic fashion away at Burton. So we took the lead in a bit of a sloppy first half. No side really created much chances, doing much with the ball. But there was one moment in equality, and in the end, it was a free kick from Luke O'Connell, about 25 yards out into the back of the net, was the only difference in quality between the two sides going into the first half. And having scored in the first half, the next team to score were Burton, but not till quite late in that second half. An 88th minute equaliser. There was a header, and sort of some people saying the defender could have done better. Some people saying keeper could have done better. Either way, the goal went in, goal given. So we 1-1, having been 1-0 up for quite a lot of the game in a bit of a, I guess, classic League One game. Really, no one really standing out. Not many chances. Chucking it down with rain as well. You know what Burton Albion's like as well. Not the nicest of pitches at times.
A slip and slide.
Exactly, not the greatest of It just wasn't a classic League One basically. Just not your nicest game. And then up steps Stephen Humphreys, headed in for an in-swinger Corey O'Keefe cross from the left-hand side, and nodded in stoppage time in front of the Barnsley faithful. I was not there myself, but I had lots of friends and I knew lots of people in the away end, and I've seen videos since, and the away end, as you expect, went wild as Barnsley managed to clinch a last-minute winner. So, in the end, result was what we needed, sort of determined grit, sort of to see out that result, and 3 points is all that matters. And actually puts the Reds into third place in the league table, which is pretty good going, despite the negativity of the club in the past week or so. So, result over performance for sure.
That's the most surprising thing, is the league positioning, because it seems there's just been so much negativity around Barnsley. In other words, they've lost 10-0 in the last two games collectively before this one, and there was a real sort of a downtrodden atmosphere, I guess you'd say, and then suddenly they've picked up a result, a 90th minute winner, a great weekend to be a Humphrey. Obviously, Cameron scoring for Wycombe, the late winner, as we mentioned earlier on, and then Stephen in this one getting the decisive goal. And suddenly they're third in the table, and it's looking really rosy, and they're only just off the automatics. It can be a banana skin. This is how I feel about Burton. A bit like a Stevenage, perhaps in a different way. Obviously, Stevenage plays such dogged, old-fashioned football, and it works for them. They shut teams down. They're a difficult team to break down. Obviously, Barnsley found that out last Saturday. And then Burton, in a different way, it's not a nice place to go, especially when it's a bit wet, a bit windy, and it's got past November. You don't want to be going to Burton's ground, the Pirelli, after November, really, because you're going to be sliding around. You need some flippers with you, but they're not an easy team to play against. At the best of times, obviously, new management, a big turnover in the summer has sort of changed that a little bit, but they're still never an easy team. But they've got through, obviously, a lovely free kick from Luca Connell to get the first goal, and then that off the bench, Humphreys scoring the winner. And it's great resilience is the bit I was going to pick out from it, because they conceded in the 88th minute, that equaliser, and I think countless teams, you'd concede that late on and think, we've blown it. We'll make sure we don't lose. Just make sure we get the point, because we've lost all three. And then 2 minutes later, Barnsley have gone and scored and got themselves all 3 points. I think that's really the impressive thing, that they've managed to rebound from a late, what Burton would have thought was a late equaliser, scoring themselves a point, and then they've gone up the other end and put themselves back in the lead, Barnsley. So all credit to them on that aspect of it, and back to winning ways. It was the reaction Darrell Clark wanted, and he got it from his side.
Yeah, and he mentioned that in his post-match interview as well. As you said there, the determination and the desire to keep going despite conceding that late equaliser. Great. As I said, sort of result of performance, but it's always nice to get that last-minute winner away from home as well. Particularly after the tough week that we've had, and hopefully stepping up as well. We signed him on deadline day as a free agent, and I think he's sort of still getting up to match fitness. So we've only really seen him sort of make substitute appearances, and the odd sort of 10-15 minutes here and there. Although he did have a good cameo appearance at Old Trafford in midweek. So it's good to him to get his first goal for the club as well, and a great strike in the first half by Connell. So plenty of positives, and always helps when you score a last minute winner away from home.
Fantastic. We'll move on then to the final of our 6 feature games. And it's the one involving the Galacticos of League One, the Real Madrid of League One, the big spenders, whatever else Steve Evans decides to spout pre-match. But it didn't make a difference because they lost 2-0 at home in this one, Rotherham United. But Birmingham obviously doing really well. We'll talk about how well they're doing. Game in hand, they've got on Wrexham up the top of the table, only behind on 1 goal difference. So they're doing really well. But on the negative end, what's happening at Rotherham? I think it's really just confusing. I know when they beat Huddersfield, it was like, well, this is what's going to kick them into gear after such a poor start to the season. It was just get that first victory. They did it obviously in quite dramatic fashion. Malik Wilkes, I think it was, who got that winner there.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it's, they're going to get on the front foot. And then, no, they've gone back to how it was before that. And they can't seem to buy a win away from home. And they can't seem to get many at home. So you've got to be really worried about Rotherham. Only 1 win so far, 3 draws, 3 losses. And they're in the relegation zone.
Yeah. To be fair, if we take the result alone from the weekend, I'm not overly concerned. But as you said, if we look at the bigger picture, that there is plenty to worry about if you're a Rotherham supporter. I'm not sure if Steve Bruce has spent more time this week praising Birmingham than actually preparing.
Steve Evans,
Sorry, Steve Evans. Yeah, beg your pardon. Yeah. I think he spent more time this week praising Birmingham and how good they are of a club. And the fact that they're like the Real Madrid and the Galacticos of League One.
Well, it's just classic Steve Evans, isn't it? He's trying to make him the underdog, trying to make his team the underdog, trying to get that spirit going of, oh, it's little old Rotherham, we're going to try and beat the big boys. And in this game, it hasn't worked. That tactic's worked before. He knows what he's doing, Steve Evans. And as much as it gets a bit old, a bit tired for listening to the interviews and you know what he's going to say, I mean, you tick it off the bingo sheet. As you're listening to his interviews pre and post match, but it hasn't worked for him, and they've gone into this game, admittedly, as the underdogs. I mean, anyone playing Birmingham this season are underdogs with the money they spent. Stansfield got a goal in this one, 10, 15 million obviously he cost, and everyone's an underdog against that. But the way he tries to spin it of the fact that it's little old Rotherham, it's David versus Goliath, and Rotherham are still one of the big teams in this division. That they spent a decent amount in the summer, obviously getting Steve Evans back in, getting together this squad, of bringing back all the old players that did so well for them in the past, and it's not gone well for them so far this season. And there's only so long you can make out that you're the underdog before you have to admit that you're not doing as well as you should be.
Yeah, no, that's true, and evidently, I think during the week he should have done less talking and more doing on the training pitch. As you said, they're only 6 points so far this season, one win within that as well, and occupied the last relegation spot in the league table. So yeah, I know we've spoken a little bit about Cambridge. You know that they are rooted at the bottom, but as you said at one point, do questions start to be asked over Steve Evans and his side, and you know how much patience does the board give him and the fans? You know, there's lots of questions to be had. I think we know he will get the benefit of the doubt because he only came in this summer, and there's loads of new players that he signed, and he's been at Rotherham before, so you know the board and the fans know what to sort of expect. They're just not getting any of that at this moment in time.
And he does deserve that benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I've sort of stuck the boot in a little bit there, maybe a bit tongue-in-cheek a little bit, in terms of the Galacticos and everything he was going on about. But he's obviously a good manager. And at this level, he's one of the better. He's done so well with Stevenage last season for the most part. He's done well with Rotherham in the past, come back in, and you was expecting them to have a really good season, and it's not started that way. Obviously, a long way still to go. But yeah, there's no, not like a Gary Monk, there's no concerns at all that Steve Evans is going to be on his way out because there's too much stock, and rightfully so, too much credit in the bank for him to be under any real threat.
Yeah, but then you have got to ask the question, you know, with the money and the players that they have brought in, they are currently in the relegation zone. So that has got to be a concern. I know we're only 6-7 games in at Rotherham. I think I had a game when not many others did in that international break. So, you know, there's not actually been that long of a season. But there has at some point, there's got to be I guess a question mark or a question asked. when is it going to get better? Because Rotherham, as you said, they are one of the big hitters in the league, and they currently find themselves 21st in the league rankings. That is not acceptable, really. If you're being plain and simple about it, it's not acceptable. Steve Bruce will not be happy about it, but the way he's coming out after every game, I don't know, doing all this big celebration when he won at Huddersfield. Yes, it's great to get a derby victory, but then ultimately, it's not, it doesn't mean anything because they're still actually quite low down in the table. So it's that, it's not just the case for Steve Evans. I think it's the case for any manager when they come in new over the summer. They're bringing so many players that they have done, but at some point, whether that be next week or even next month, if Rotherham is still about where they are now, there's got to be questions asked. I think, like you said, at the minute it's fine, but it's only going to be
It
fine.
can't go on forever.
Exactly, and it's only going to be fine if results start picking up, but results aren't picking up at the moment.
Yeah, definitely that. And I've took the hint that you want to talk about Blackpool. I mean, you've said Steve Bruce's names about 4 times there.
I did not. I meant Steve Evans. I'm just got Bruce Ball in my head.
Well, we're going to talk about Bruce Ball now as we go through the rest of the results from the weekend, and we got to mention it. Obviously, a second win, 2 games, 2 wins for Steve Bruce out at Blackpool. He's loving his time on the seaside. This one away to Charlton, and I mean, he's doing a great job. It has to be said.
Yeah, Steve Evans is doing a great job at Blackpool. Oh, come on, Jamie, come on, did you get it or not?
Yeah, I got that one.
There we go. Yeah, Steve Evans is doing a great job Steve Bruce is doing a great job with the Tangerines. And particularly that away performance. My friend's a Blackpool fan and was in the away end, and I had to mention to James before at half time. He said, "We're going to win the league." He messaged me, "We're going to win the league," because he was very impressed with the first half performance in which they were 2-0 up. They won 2-1 at the end, so they conceded. But yeah, evidently Bruce has come in, stamped sort of his style onto the team, and things are gelling pretty quickly, which is very good if you're a Blackpool fan.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in all seriousness, obviously they're going to win the league. In all seriousness, he's turned it around already. I mean, coming in, it was a place with so much negativity, not got a win yet in the league, and obviously ignoring the cup defeat against Sheffield Wednesday, they've won back-to-back league games now, both by 2-1 scorelines, and Berry scored in the 96th minute, which cost me a few points in my fantasy. I had James Husband in for this one. So a bit disappointed about that. But I'll forgive him because it's a 2 wins in 2 for Steve Bruce. And they're looking in the right direction. Yeah, Steve Evans, definitely. So that really sort of the pick of the other games. The one I was at, Wigan at Lincoln, I mean, I'll say it was the most boring game I've ever seen, and that is more time I've given it there than it deserved. One of the early kickoffs. The other early kickoff, Exeter, Stevenage, it was a 2-0 win for Exeter. And then elsewhere, Mansfield coming from behind to beat Shrewsbury 2-1. Peterborough United 3-2 against Bristol Rovers. And then top of the table, Wrexham, they beat Crawley 2-1. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you've been with us on YouTube, Sam and Callum will be back with you towards the back end of the week to preview the coming weekend. And I'm sure they'll talk about the midweek fixtures, a couple of sort of catch-up games after the international break happening during midweek. I've been Jamie Johnson, Seb Jones, obviously been alongside me as always. And do come back next week, same time, same place, for another episode of the League One Lowdown Review.